John Harbaugh getting ready for the Sunday night finale. We will be there in Pittsburgh for Ravens at Steelers. Winner is in, loser is out. That's the one spot yet to be decided in the AFC playoff field. And there will be questions about the coach of the team that loses. There already are. 19 years for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, 18 years for John Harbaugh in Baltimore. The same arguments that Ben Roethlisberger made a month ago about Tomlin apply to Harbaugh. You get to a point where you got to ask the question, is it time for a fresh start for everyone? Does the coach want to move on? Does the team want to move on? Shefty was on McAfee's show yesterday talking about one of these two guys ending up in TV for a year if they don't coach somewhere else. So it just feels, and it's this strange parallel track, and it doesn't surprise me that the NFL ultimately selected Ravens-Steelers for that final game because it has storylines that transcend the playoff spot. The playoff spot is the fulcrum, but there's all this other stuff. And it's all, is it Aaron Rodgers' last game ever? Is it Lamar Jackson's last game in Baltimore? Is it John Harbaugh's last game with the Ravens? Is it Mike Tomlin's last game with the Steelers? There is so much beyond who's getting a ticket to the party. And I really don't know. And we won't know until one team wins and one team loses. But if the Ravens lose, yeah, that could be it for John Harbaugh in Baltimore, Devin.
You know better than me with knowing different people in organizations. I think this is a very unique year because there's so many names that are coming up. Like we just talked about Atlanta. We're talking about Baltimore and Pittsburgh, of like these coaches possibly being gone. Who are these candidates that are supposed to replace these? Like I usually feel like there's like a bunch of names every year of like guys who have been waiting maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, or like have these incredible years as coordinators and they're just waiting in the wings to be head coaches. This year just doesn't feel like that per se. And then like you hear Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh's names, and I think we talked about it on here before where both these guys, if they decide to go to TV, that's one thing. But if they don't, like it just feels like all the other teams are going to be like, sign me up. Like I would love to get one of these veteran head coaches. So, and I get it. Baltimore has underachieved this year. But I just wonder, like, who next? Like, who would be the guy to replace a Harbaugh or a Tomlin for these organizations?
You make a great point, and when you think about it, what usually happens is, and the media has, especially those who call the games, they have a tremendous amount of influence in who the candidates become because they push these guys, whether they do it on purpose or not. They praise these guys during primetime standalone games and owners are watching. And the owners get influenced because the owners generally don't know. They don't know any more than the rest of us. They're really rich fans who got so rich they bought a team or they were in the will. It's not like they're football savants. And then, you know, on top of that, you got the people in the truck who are pressing the buttons on what camera comes up. You know, we'll see a given coordinator becomes cut to him. Remember when they were cutting to Steve Belichick all the time when he first really became prominent in New England? They're cutting to him all the time. They cut to Robert Saleh all the time in 2019 when the 49ers were really good, and that propelled his candidacy. But, you know, speaking of Saleh, think about this. Usually it's coordinators from the teams that are clustered at the top of the league. So the 49ers end up the 1 seed. Robert Saleh. Is Robert Saleh going to get another head coaching job after what happened with the Jets? I don't know. Broncos, 1 seed in the AFC potentially. Vance Joseph, former head coach of the Broncos. Is he going to get another opportunity? Is Josh McDaniels, who's been a head coach twice with the Broncos and the Raiders, Patriots win the East, and what if they become the 1 seed? And look at what he's done with Drake May. Does Josh McDaniels become a candidate? So there isn't that guy, the Ben Johnson type. Never coached before, windows open, maybe, and as he didn't go through it previously, and it's time. It's his time. You know, Cliff Kingsbury, last year starting to get some buzz. This year, Commanders weren't very good. Is the window going to be open? I don't know. So you're right. There isn't that cluster of no-brainer candidates, and that's got to be a factor in what you decide as an organization. Because before you fire the coach you have, you need to have a reasonable idea. And I'm not suggesting you don't do a proper search, but you got to have some idea that you're going to upgrade. There's a chance you're going to downgrade. If you move on from Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh, there's a damn good chance you're going to downgrade. And I know that there are plenty of Steelers fans who are like, you know what you're talking about? They should have fired him 15 years ago. Okay, shut up. There's a chance you're going to downgrade. A pretty good chance you're going to downgrade if you move on from Mike Tomlin.
And I think it's interesting because I was talking to my brother about this yesterday. There's a battle of, you have Mike Vrabel, who's taken over the Patriots, 4 wins the previous year, and he's like the leader type. He's the guy that comes in, he changes your organization. They have a true defensive coordinator that's already there. They have a true offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels. So, like, he is just the manager of everything. And I think that has opened some eyes for people being like, hey, we can still get these head coaches who are going to be able to run the organization, be the CEO type. But then on the other side, that's just him. But then you have Liam Cohen, you have Ben Johnson, these guys who are offensive gurus who come in and they take this quarterback who everyone's not 100% sold on, former number 1 picks, Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence, and now they're playing their best ball. And I get it. Like, Mike Vrabel's been awesome. But I think he's a special situation. I think Josh McDaniels, being a 2-time former head coach and being an offensive coordinator who has had a lot of success with Tom Brady, 1 year with Mac Jones, and now with Drake May, I think that's unique. So I do wonder, too, as you look at these candidates, I've seen a lot of defensive guys. I've seen Chris Shula. I've seen Jesse Minter, Jeff Hafley, like Robert Saleh, Vance Joseph, you just mentioned. And what comes along with that is you have to find the right offensive coordinator. Look at the Houston Texans. Like, D'Amico Ryans has come in there. This team's played well, but they had Bobby Slowick. They got rid of Bobby Slowick. Now Nick Caley's there. Like, they've had to find their offensive coordinator to try to make this thing work. So I do wonder in which way the league is shifting. With these head coaching vacancies, does Matt Nagy get another opportunity? Does Joe Brady's name from the Buffalo Bills, does his name appear? Because I do think owners are going to look and say, hey, if I have a quarterback, I need to find the guy that's going to coach him. And it's unique because I do think the Mike Vrabels of the world works. I think it's what made Dan Campbell great, of having an offensive coordinator there as well. I think we've seen what that looks like without Ben Johnson. So I can't wait to see this. But I would be very reluctant to let Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh go. And whatever the problems they have there could be real, but I just think you could have a lot more problems if you move on from those guys.
I think that when Marcus Freeman, the Notre Dame coach, announced yesterday that he's staying with the Irish, I think that seals the door shut on the Steelers doing anything with Mike Tomlin, because I think that's who the Steelers would hire and would have hired. Although Marcus Freeman's going to be 40 in January. He may be too old for the Steelers because they've hired, these 3 coaches they've had since 1969. Chuck Noll was 37, Bill Cowher was 34, and Mike Tomlin was 34 when they got the job. So 40's a little too old for the Steelers. I'm kidding. But I think that with Freeman staying in South Bend, because I don't know this. It's just reading tea leaves and, looking at the candidates and what the Steelers would be trying to do. And I just think that Marcus Freeman would be a very viable candidate to take over the Steelers and be there. They like having guys there 20 years. He'd be an ideal candidate to be there for 20 years if that's the guy that they would have been interested in. I think with him staying put, there isn't the like that. If any Steelers fan out there that wants to get rid of Mike Tomlin, ask yourself the honest, objective question: who is your next coach? And be realistic about it. Be fair about it. I mean, Mike McCarthy, to bring him home to Pittsburgh, and I'm very sensitive to ageism in football because it happens, but he's in his 60s. How long is he going to be there? Like, the Steelers are going to want a coach who's going to potentially be there a long time. That's their thing. So there isn't that guy that you just say, boom, okay, there's our replacement. Now, look, Mike Tomlin wasn't the obvious replacement when Bill Cowher left, but he left. They had to go find someone. If you're going to make the choice to move on from Mike Tomlin, you better have an idea of where that next Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin is going to come from. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.